I didn't check my phone until the speeches were over. That was the rule I'd set for myself. No phone during the Hartwell anniversary gala. Not during cocktail hour. Not during dinner. Not during the moment my director, Mr. Ball Ellison, stood at the podium and thanked the team for delivering the Meridian account. I had spent 11 months on that account. 11 months of 7 a.m. starts and missed dinners, and one very memorable Saturday where I sat in a Panera booth for 6 hours rewriting a financial projection because the numbers told a story nobody upstairs wanted to hear, so I made them tell a better one, an honest one, but framed differently. Meridian signed for 4 years. It was the biggest contract our regional office had ever closed, so no phone. I was going to be present for one night. I found out later that the message had come in at 8:47 p.m., right around the time the chocolate lava cake was being served. My name is Vivian, and I want to tell you what happened the night I was handed a termination notice at my own celebration dinner, and what happened 40 minutes later when my new boss's father walked through that door. I'd been with Calloway Financial Partners for 6 years. Started as a junior analyst at 24, fresh out of grad school, carrying more student debt than confidence. The company wasn't glamorous. Regional financial consulting, mostly mid-sized manufacturers and distribution companies in the Midwest. But it was solid, and the work was real, and I was good at it in a way that surprised even me. My direct boss for most of those 6 years was a man named Mr. Ellison. He was the kind of manager who never took credit for your work and never let you take blame for his mistakes, which sounds like a low bar until you've worked enough places to know how rare it actually is. He had hired me out of a stack of 40 resumes, he told me once, because my cover letter didn't use the word passionate a single time. He said everyone uses passionate. He wanted someone who would just show up and do the work. I showed up. I did the work. By the time I was 31, I was managing 3 junior analysts, running the company's 2 largest accounts, and was, according to Mr. Ellison, next in line for the regional director position that was opening up when he moved to the corporate advisory board in January. That was September. The gala was in October. In early October, the owner of Calloway Financial, a man none of us in the regional office had ever met in person, a Mr. Calloway Sr. who ran things from the company's headquarters in Boston, announced that his son would be joining the firm, not as a junior anything, as regional director, effective immediately. His name was his name was Donovan Calloway. He was 28 years old. His LinkedIn said he had spent the previous 3 years doing independent investment consulting, which, as best anyone could tell, meant he had managed his own stock portfolio with his father's money. He had no client-facing experience. He had never closed an account. He had an MBA from a school that was very expensive and not particularly impressive, and he wore watches that cost more than my monthly rent. He flew in on a Wednesday. By Thursday afternoon, he had already rearranged the seating in the office so that his desk had a view of the city. By Friday, he had introduced himself to every single person on the team except me. I thought maybe he hadn't gotten to me yet. He had gotten to me, he just didn't feel the need to introduce himself. I found that out the following Monday when he called what he described as a restructuring conversation and informed me that, going forward, I would be reporting not directly to him, but to a new team lead he was bringing in, a friend of his, as it turned out, who had also never worked in financial consulting. He said he wanted to rebuild the team's culture. He said it with the confidence of someone who had never had to build anything. I smiled and said I understood. I did not understand, but I had learned, over 6 years, that the loudest room in a meeting is rarely the most powerful one. The gala was an annual event, Calloway Financial's Client Appreciation Dinner, held every October at the Harrington Hotel downtown. It was the one night a year when the office dressed up, when the clients brought their spouses, when Mr. Ellison gave a speech that actually made people feel good about the work they did. It mattered. Not in a performative way. In the way that a room full of people who trust each other with their money can feel, for one evening, like something more than a transaction. This year, the speech was different, because Mr. Ellison was leaving, and Donovan was supposed to be introduced as the new face of the regional office. I wore a navy dress I'd bought 3 years ago for a friend's wedding and hadn't worn since. I got there early to help with the seating arrangements because that was the kind of thing I did without being asked, and also because I genuinely liked the events coordinator at the hotel. A woman named Rosie who always remembered my name and once comped my parking because I'd helped her untangle a vendor dispute that would have wrecked the setup timeline. Dinner was good. The Meridian team sat at table 4 and they were warm and generous, and the CEO, a man named Mr. Bowder, Huang, made a point of finding me before the entrees and shaking my hand and saying, quietly, "Your work on the projection revisions last spring, that's the reason we're sitting here tonight." I hope they know that. I told him I was sure they did. Donovan gave a speech after Mr. Ellison's. It was 4 minutes long, and he used the word synergy twice and mentioned his own name 7 times. I counted. The applause was polite. I was at the dessert station talking to 2 of the junior analysts when I felt my phone vibrate in my clutch. I ignored it. It vibrated again. Then again. I excused myself to the restroom and pulled it out in the hallway. 17 notifications. 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. And 1 email from Donovan Calloway sent at 8:47 p.m. with the subject line, "Action Required, Employment Status." I stood very still in the hallway of the Harrington Hotel in my navy dress, with the sound of the gala coming through the closed ballroom doors, and I read the email. Effective immediately, due to a strategic restructuring of the regional division, my position was being eliminated. My access to company systems would be revoked at 9 a.m. the following business day. HR would be in touch regarding the return of any company property. I was thanked for my contributions. It was 9:03 p.m. I read it twice. Then I put my phone back in my clutch and walked back into the ballroom. Here's the thing nobody tells you about receiving truly shocking news. Your body keeps moving even when your brain has stopped. I walked back to the dessert station. I accepted a small plate of something chocolate. I responded to a question someone asked me about the Meridian renewal timeline. I did all of this on autopilot while one part of my brain quietly turned the email over and over like a stone. The other part of my brain was doing something else entirely. It was remembering a conversation I'd had 3 weeks earlier with Mr. Ellison in his office with the door closed. He had been preparing me for his transition. We had talked about the Meridian account, about the Bauer account, about the 2 new prospective clients I had been cultivating for almost a year. He had said very specifically, "These relationships are yours, they trust you. Whatever happens with the transition, that doesn't change." And then he had said something else. He had asked me to review a document before he filed it with the corporate office, a client relationship agreement. Standard language, mostly, except for 1 clause, which he had flagged in yellow highlight, and which I had read 3 times to make sure I understood it correctly. It said in clear and unambiguous legal terms that the senior relationship manager on any account signed during their tenure retained independent advisory rights to that client for a period of 36 months, and that any disruption to that relationship, including termination, triggered a notification clause requiring direct client consent before the company could appoint a replacement. Mr. Ellison had looked at me over his reading glasses and said, "Make sure you keep a copy of that." I had kept a copy. I had kept it in 3 places, actually. My personal email, a USB drive in my apartment, and a secure cloud folder my college roommate had helped me set up 2 years ago when I'd started getting anxious about job security in the industry. I finished my dessert. I said goodnight to the Meridian team. I thanked Rosie at the front desk. I retrieved my coat from the coat check. I was almost at the lobby doors when I heard Donovan's voice behind me. "Vivian." I turned around. He was standing in the entrance to the ballroom, bow tie slightly loosened, a glass of bourbon in his hand. He looked surprised to see me, which was interesting, given that he'd sent the email 2 hours ago. "You got my email," he said. It wasn't a question. "I did," I said. "Good." He seemed to be waiting for something. A reaction, maybe. A display of something he could feel superior to. I gave him nothing. "I think it's cleaner this way," he said. "Instead of dragging it out. You've had a good run. 6 years is a long time, but we're taking the office in a new direction. And Donovan," I said. Just his name. Quietly. He stopped. I'm going to head home, I said. Thank you for the dinner. I walked to the lobby doors. I was halfway through them when his voice came again. Louder this time, the way voices get when someone realizes they're not getting the response they wanted. You should know I've already briefed the team. This isn't a negotiation. I didn't turn around. I know, I said, and I walked out. My apartment was 12 minutes from the hotel. I changed out of the navy dress, made a cup of tea, and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. I pulled up the client relationship agreement. I pulled up my contact list. I pulled up the 3 prospective client files I had been managing, 2 of which I knew were at a critical stage. One of them, a distribution company called Lakeview Logistics, was 3 weeks away from signing what would have been the second largest account in the office's history. I drafted 3 emails. Professional, warm, factual. I informed each client contact of my departure, provided my personal email address for continuity, and noted, gently but clearly, that per their existing service agreement, any transition of their account management would require their direct approval and a 30-day notice period. Then I forwarded all 3 emails to Mr. Ellison, with a brief note. Wanted you to be aware. I'm handling things carefully. He replied in 11 minutes. It was almost 11 p.m. His reply said, I know you are. Call me tomorrow. I went to sleep. The next morning, I was awake at 6 and at my kitchen table by 6:15 with more tea and a very clear list of the things I needed to do. I had been preparing for something like this, not this specifically, not this suddenly, but some version of it, since the day Donovan walked into the office and didn't bother to introduce himself to me. When someone shows you how they see you in the first week, believe them. By 8:30, I had responses from 2 of the 3 clients. Both expressed concern about the transition. Both asked, specifically, to continue working with me, and both requested clarification on the 30-day notice requirement before any replacement could be assigned. The Lakeview Logistics contact, a woman named Miss Farrow, their CFO, called me directly at 8:45. Vivian, she said. What is happening over there? I explained, calmly and without editorializing, that I had been let go and that I wanted to make sure she had the information she needed. You've been managing our preliminary process for 10 months, she said. We're 3 weeks from signing. We are not starting over with someone new. That is not happening. I thanked her and told her I would keep her informed. At 9:03, my company email access was revoked. Exactly as promised. At 9:17, my personal phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Is this Vivian? The voice was older. Measured. The kind of voice that had spent decades in rooms where decisions were made and had long since stopped needing to perform authority. It is, I said. This is Charles Calloway, the voice said. I believe we need to talk. I had never spoken to Charles Calloway Sr. I had never been in the same room as him. He was, to everyone in the regional office, a name on a letterhead and a signature at the bottom of the annual performance review template. He was the company. He just wasn't visible. He had, as it turned out, been in contact with Mr. Ellison since the previous evening. He had also, as it turned out, received a call that morning from the CEO of Meridian, Mr. Ezane Huang, who had heard through a mutual contact about the termination and had questions, and he had received an email from the Lakeview Logistics CFO's legal team flagging the client relationship clause and the notification requirement. He was not pleased. My son acted without authorization, he said. It wasn't an apology. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the flatness of someone who had made peace with a difficult truth. The termination notice is being rescinded as of this morning. Your position is reinstated with full back pay for any gap period. I was quiet for a moment. I appreciate that, I said, but I'd like to think about it before I give you an answer. Another pause. Longer this time. That's fair, he said. I thought about it for 4 days. I talked to Mr. Ellison, who had been honest with me in the way that only someone who respects you can be honest. He said the regional directorship was still available, that Charles had made that clear, and that Donovan was being moved to a role in the Boston office, something that sounded like a promotion but wasn't. The way those things often work when a family company needs to manage a problem without publicly acknowledging it. I talked to my sister, who asked me if I actually wanted to go back or if I just wanted to win. It was a good question. I talked to Ms. Euron Farrow at Lakeview Logistics, who told me that if I opened my own advisory practice, Lakeview would be my first client. She said it with the easy certainty of someone who had already decided. On the fourth day, I called Charles Calloway Sr. back. I told him I was grateful for the offer. I told him I had enormous respect for what the company had built and for Mr. Ellison's leadership over the years. And then I told him that I would not be returning. I told him that effective immediately, I was establishing an independent advisory practice and that 3 of Calloway Financial's clients, including Lakeview Logistics, had already expressed intent to transition their accounts to my firm under the terms of the client relationship agreement. He was quiet for a long time. That agreement was designed to protect clients, he said finally. I know, I said. It's protecting them now. I won't pretend it was easy after that. Starting something from scratch at 31, with no office and no staff, and a business plan I'd written at my kitchen table at midnight. It was terrifying in the specific, practical way that things are terrifying when you're doing them alone and the stakes are real and there's no one to blame if it doesn't work. But here is what I also knew. I had 6 years of relationships that were mine. Not the company's. Mine. Built through actual work, actual reliability, actual care. You cannot terminate a relationship. You can only terminate a contract. Lakeview Logistics signed with me 8 days after I registered my LLC. The Meridian renewal, which had been processed months before my termination, included a co-advisory arrangement that Mr. Huang had quietly structured with my personal contact email, not the company address, something I hadn't asked him to do, but which told me he had seen the situation clearly before I had. Within the first 4 months, I had 5 clients. Within the first year, I had 11. I hired my first employee, one of the junior analysts from Calloway Financial, who had submitted her resignation the week after mine, and sent me a message asking if I had room for her in March. The office is small. It's on the 4th floor of a building that smells a little bit like old carpet and strong coffee, and the view is of a parking garage, and I love it. I heard about Donovan secondhand through a contact who still worked at the corporate office in Boston. He lasted in the Boston role for about 7 months before he and his father had a falling out that I was not privy to the details of, and am not going to speculate about. He left the company. His LinkedIn now lists him as a founder and principal of something called a strategic advisory firm, which appears to have no clients and no employees, and was registered to his home address. I don't think about him often. What I think about, sometimes, when I'm at my kitchen table early in the morning with my tea and my laptop and the particular quiet of 6:15 a.m., is the moment I stood in the hallway of the Harrington Hotel and read that email and felt the floor shift under me. That moment when everything I had built inside someone else's walls was suddenly, with one email sent at 8:47 on a Tuesday evening, declared irrelevant. I think about how I put the phone back in my clutch and walked back into the ballroom. I think about the chocolate dessert and the conversation about the Meridian timeline and the way my legs kept moving even when my brain was still. I think about what Mr. Ellison had said to me 3 weeks before, across his desk with his reading glasses and the highlighted clause in yellow. Make sure you keep a copy of that. I think about Rosie at the coat check desk who handed me my coat with a smile and said, "Lovely night." And I said, "It really was," and meant it in a way she probably didn't fully understand. Some things that look like endings are just poorly timed beginnings. The timing is disorienting, the ending part is wrong. I built something that belonged to me. That's the whole story. That's always been the whole story. I've thought a lot about why Donovan did what he did the way he did it, not the termination itself. That I understood in the cold transactional way you understand things that hurt. He wanted the office reshaped around him, and I was too established, too connected to the clients, too much of a reminder that the work required actual competence. That part made sense. What I still turn over sometimes is the timing. The email at 8:47 p.m. at the gala while I was standing 40 feet away eating chocolate dessert. That wasn't strategy. That was theater. He wanted me to unravel in public, to make a scene, to hand him a story where he was the reasonable one and I was the problem. He had probably imagined it. The confrontation, the tears, maybe some raised voices near the dessert station that the clients would hear and quietly file away. What he didn't account for was that I had spent 6 years learning, in very practical terms, what actually matters in a professional relationship. Not titles, not org charts, not whose name is on the letterhead. What matters is trust, and trust lives in the work, and the work was mine. You can revoke someone's email access. You cannot revoke 10 months of relationship building with a CFO who calls you directly on a Tuesday morning because she trusts your judgment over everyone else in the building. That's not luck. That's the compounding return on doing things the right way consistently over a long period of time, without waiting for someone to notice. I think about Mr. Ellison a lot, the way he flagged that clause in yellow and slid it across the desk without making it dramatic. He was teaching me something. But he was also trusting me to understand it without being told explicitly. That kind of respect, the kind that assumes your intelligence instead of performing it, is rare. I try to carry it forward in how I treat the people who work with me now, and I think about what it cost Donovan in the end to take the shortcut, not just professionally. There's something that happens to a person when they spend their energy trying to control outcomes they haven't earned. It hollows out the part of you that knows how to build something real. He had every resource available to him, his father's company, an established team, clients who were already loyal. And he spent it trying to eliminate the one person who actually knew how things worked. That's not a management failure. That's a character one. The integrity was always the point. Not as a moral performance, but as a practical foundation. You build on it, or eventually you find out what happens when you don't. I signed my 5th client 4 months after I registered my LLC. I was sitting at my kitchen table at 6:15 in the morning, same as always, same tea, same quiet. I remember closing the laptop and sitting there for a minute just listening to the building. It wasn't a dramatic feeling. It was steadier than that. It felt like something that had always been there, finally in the right hands.